I was introducing the general subject of this weekend's discussion this morning by trying to describe my own approach to the study of comparative religion and the psychology of religion, saying that I was really in the following of William James, who tried two things: to give a description of the psychological dynamics of religious experience as brought about by what you might really call the various disciplines, and concentrating rather heavily on the type of experience which his contemporary R.M. Buck called cosmic consciousness, the state in which the individual has a transformation of his awareness of his own identity and experiences himself, instead of being a skin-encapsulated ego, as a being continuous with the entire universe, the cosmos or its energy. And I went on to say that he made the point that you can't really verify this sort of experience, but you could only test it by its consequences for human behavior. But I wanted to go a step further than that and say that the pragmatic aspect of this sort of experience is not merely moral and social, universal in the sense that the question of man's relationship to his physical environment is one that is now crucial in the middle of the 20th century, because our technology gives us the capacity to destroy the planet, and not necessarily by atomic fission, but by improper ways of attempting to control the natural environment, both animal, vegetable, and mineral. So that more than ever, it seems to me of a practical import to go beyond the hallucination that we are separate from the total natural environment. And so this brings up the whole problem of the study of religion as not a merely historical matter, not simply a study of museum pieces, but it brings up the study of religion as an experimental inquiry. You know, it's a funny thing, in the academic world as we've known it for some time, all effete subjects are taught by the historical method. For example, when you learn mathematics, your initial courses are not on the history of mathematics. When you go to medical school, the only courses on the history of medicine are electives for graduate students, pretty much, or seniors. But you will always notice that beginning religion is apt to be history of religions, beginning philosophy is apt to be history of philosophy, which advertises right away that these are museum pieces. You can also tell a great deal from the size of the department and its position in the general geography of a campus. We have got a campus set up nowadays where the central building is the administration building, because that's the most important thing going on. In a funny old place like Oxford, you can't even find the administration building. But now, here it comes up a very considerable question. There is a professor at Harvard in the Department of Social Relations, who shall be nameless. About a little while ago, when there was a disturbance there, because people were altering their consciousness and studying its effects, he made the pronouncement that nothing which is incapable of being put into words, or rather no non-verbal area, is a proper subject for the academy, for the university. And I began wondering about the Harvard football team. But surely this is a very strange attitude. But it's not a new one at all. We've been through all this before. And long ago, most scientific people were on the other end of the argument. Because in the 16th and 17th centuries, when Western science really began to get underway, what is not generally realized is that natural science and mysticism, whether it was the sort of mysticism which I suppose you would call theosophy in the original meaning of that word, I don't mean the Theosophical Society, but the theosophy of a man like Paracelsus, or of Nicholas of Cusa, or of Van Helmont. This was something which went hand in hand with a curiosity about natural science and an experimental attitude to the study of nature. I don't need to tell you, the theologians who refused to look through Galileo's telescope wouldn't look through it because they already knew what the state of affairs was, because it was revealed in the Bible and in the writings of Aristotle. So you got a scholasticism where people were depending entirely for knowledge on the written system, on the verbal system, and they would not put this verbal system to the test of experiment. But the young scientists of the West wanted to read the book of nature. Francis Bacon very strongly criticized scholastics for having a system of great elaborateness. He said it's like a spider weaving out of itself webs of great subtlety and precision, but of no substance or profit. And he thought this was conceited, and that one should instead refer to the experience of the physical world. But the trouble with that was, from the scholastic point of view, that it involved getting your hands dirty, because scientific experiment required manual operations, and this is beneath the dignity of a Brahmin. You have to be a Shudra to get into manual operations, or a Kshatriya who fights. But the same, we have a tendency now for the same thing to be true. That, look at the curious thing. We all make jokes about two-bit colleges that give courses in basket weaving. And in both high school and college, what you might call practical courses are looked upon, unless they're in medicine or physics or chemistry or something like that, they are looked upon as something for dropouts. If you're in high school and it looks as if you're not going to be very good at computation or verbalization, they suggest, well, maybe you should prepare for a trade. And alas, rather regrettably, you'd better go into the workshop. Now that's a very curious thing, because what we're doing by having a form and style of education that is exclusively literate, we are training our children to be bureaucrats, bankers, and maybe a few professional people, or even teachers, where the system just turns in on itself. You're training teachers to teach teachers to teach teachers. And as a result of this, our civilization is very seriously impoverished in certain quite fundamental things. To name a few, by and large, our cooking is abominable. Our clothes leave a great deal to be desired. Men's clothes are absurdly uncomfortable, and we all go around looking like funeral directors. And housing isn't too hot. Nobody gets particularly educated in the art of lovemaking. But all these are very fundamental to the good life. We have a reputation in the Orient and here of being the most materialistic civilization on the face of the earth. It's completely undeserved, because a materialist is a person who loves material. And we don't. We're ashamed of it. We want to conquer it, abolish it. We talk about abolishing the limitations of time and space. And as a result of this process, though I will say jet aircraft is one of the few very excellent things that we produce. It's beautiful engineering. And we produce some gorgeous scientific instruments and electronic contraptions. But when we get to more basic things, what happens, you see, is it's like this. When you can go almost immediately and instantaneously from one part of the earth to the other, the two places become the same place. So when you wake up in Tokyo nowadays, you're not quite sure where you are. You're in a strange mixture of Los Angeles, Shanghai, and Paris. And therefore tourists thinking about going, say, to Hawaii or Japan, they invariably ask their friends who've been there, is it spoiled yet?